Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. What I would like to talk about today is something that is sensitive and unfiltered, a subject that at its core touches with the concepts of vulnerability and resilience, as well as the quiet agony that many women carry with them as a result of being a woman and the desire to be a woman who has no friends. It is a reality that some people do face, whether by choice or by circumstance, and it is a reality that we do not frequently discuss. Permit me to. As if being alone is a reflection of one's character, there is a continuous narrative in our society that links loneliness to personal inadequacy. This narrative acts as if being alone is a criminal offense. The idea that being surrounded by people, whether they be friends, partners, or co-workers, is a sign of success and worthiness is reinforced to us in a subtle way. In situations where a person does not possess those connections, it is simple to have the impression that they have failed, that they are falling short in some basic way. Nevertheless, this is a dangerous misunderstanding. Being lonely is not a sign of a lack of morality. The experience is shared by all people everywhere. Everyone has been in that situation, hasn't it? At times when the phone does not ring, invitations do not arrive, or the people around us feel more like strangers than companions, we are experiencing moments of loneliness. When we are in those situations, the temptation is to turn our attention inside and place blame on them. The anguish is often compounded by our thoughts, which include what's wrong with me, or why don't I fit in this inner dialogue. This causes the feeling of isolation to be heavier and more personal than it actually exists. But let's reinterpret this. Being lonely is not a reflection of who you are as a person. What you are experiencing is a mirror of the environment around you. There are moments in life when we are placed in phases where it is more difficult to find connection. It's possible that you've relocated to a new place, adjusted your priorities, or simply outgrown relationships that are making you feel less fulfilled. Shifts like these are completely normal and occur to everyone at some point. When we are in the midst of things, however, it is simple to believe the myth that we are in some way to blame for the situation. Having a sense of loneliness is not a sign of judgment. It is your heart's way of expressing, I yearn for social interaction. The desire to feel a sense of belonging and proximity is an essential component of the human experience. There is no indication that you are broken. It indicates that you are conscious of your existence and aware of the need for other people. Rather than viewing feelings of isolation as a sign of weakness, can you imagine if we interpreted that as a rallying cry? An admonition that it is worthwhile to look for connections, at times when it appears to be out of grasp. We can open the door to potential if we are able to let go of the shame that is frequently associated with feelings of isolation. Without the burden of self-blame, we are able to concentrate on what is truly important, which includes, but is not limited to, making opportunities for connection, being present in our own lives, and being open to the possibility of people entering our globe. Furthermore, the most essential thing is that we may learn to show ourselves the same compassion and love that we so effortlessly show to other people. The feeling of loneliness is not the title of your book, rather, it is a chapter in your journey. It is not a permanent stamp on your identity, rather, it is a temporary one. When we find ourselves in a state of isolation or separation, our brains frequently become the most vocal critics of our situation. They spin tales about the reasons we are in this location, tales that are so powerful that they start to mold our perceptions of ourselves in relation to the rest of the world. This type of narrative can be as subtle as a slight whisper of doubt, or it can be as loud as a scream, completely obliterating any possibility of optimism. When you think about the stories you could have told yourself at times, such as I'm too much for people, I'm not interesting enough, or people leave because I'm not worth staying for, these thoughts, which may begin as momentary moments of uncertainty, are examples of something you might have told yourself. On the other hand, the more they are repeated, the more they get ingrained. Not only do they have an effect on how we perceive ourselves, but they also have an effect on how we relate to other people once they have taken hold. For instance, if you have the perception that you are too much, you can start to pull back in talks, not revealing your thoughts or feelings out of fear that you would leave other people feeling overwhelmed. In the event that you have the belief that you are not sufficient, you may retreat from others and completely reject opportunities for connection. The tragedy of this situation is that the same actions that these stories motivate might serve to perpetuate the feelings of isolation that they are a result of, so establishing a cycle that appears to be hard to break. One thing to keep in mind about these tales is that they almost never appear out of nowhere. The majority of the time, they are reverberations of previous experiences, relationships that have caused us pain, instances in which we have felt rejected, or cultural messages that have told us that we must be a particular way in order to be loved. The conclusions that we derive from those situations are frequently not true, despite the fact that those moments may have been actual. You are not a small person simply because you have been made to feel small by another person in the past. If you have been excluded in the past, it does not always guarantee that you will continue to be excluded in the future. The catch is that we infrequently confront these myths, which is one of the reasons why they are so powerful. Without scrutinizing their sources or the legitimacy of their claims, we choose to embrace them as fact. On the other hand, when we begin to investigate them, an extraordinary phenomenon becomes apparent. We have come to the realization that these are merely stories, they are not facts, rather they are interpretations, and interpretations are subject to change. What would happen if, rather than believing the idea that you are not sufficient, you presented yourself with a new narrative? Imagine for a moment that you were to remind yourself that the mere fact that you exist makes you deserving of connection. What would happen if, rather than viewing rejection as evidence of your inadequacy, you started to view it as a natural part of the human experience, something that everyone goes through at some point in their lives? In order to challenge these stories, it is not necessary to pretend that everything is wonderful or to create a positive attitude. Recognizing that the manner you communicate with yourself is important is the key to success. It's about coming to terms with the fact that the stories you tell yourself may either keep you stuck or set you free. However, what is the most stunning aspect? The ability to rewrite them is yours to exercise. Every step you take toward a more compassionate and kinder narrative is a step toward breaking free from the trap. This is true even if the new tale initially seems strange to you, and even if it takes some time for your heart to believe it. In addition, you will discover a space for connection, belonging, and hope, all inside that freedom. Being vulnerable can feel like the last thing you want to do in a culture that frequently promotes perfection, strength, and self-reliance due to the fact that it is so prevalent. It is dangerous to be vulnerable. There is a sense of unease. There is a possibility that a portion of yourself will be misinterpreted, rejected, or disregarded if you do this. Furthermore, it is the very thing that establishes a genuine connection between people. When there is a lack of vulnerability, relationships tend to remain shallow, and the sense of belonging is always just ahead of us. In the case of the individuals with whom you have a genuine sense of closeness and in whom you have complete faith, it is not their flawlessness that captivates you. The moments when they allowed you to see their worries, dreams, and challenges allowed you to see their humanity. It is the moments when they let their guard down. There is something very attractive about honesty, about someone having the courage to say, "This is who I am, flaws and all," and it compels us to do the same and be honest ourselves. Nevertheless, having the bravery to enter into that type of sincerity is necessary. Putting oneself out there without any assurances, showing up even when the outcome is uncertain, is what it means to do this. If I were to disclose that I am lonely to someone who might not understand, that would be an example of vulnerability. It could entail reaching out for assistance when you are having difficulty, or taking the initial move toward reestablishing a connection with a buddy from whom you have become estranged. In spite of the fact that each of these activities leaves us vulnerable, they also present us with the possibility of genuine connection. Naturally, the concern is that being vulnerable would result in rejection, and there are times when this fear is realized. Despite the fact that not everyone responds to your openness with compassion or understanding, here is the contradiction. Although being vulnerable exposes one to the possibility of being harmed, it is also the only way to discover a sense of belonging. When you choose to conceal who you are and just reveal the aspects of yourself that you consider to be secure or acceptable, the connections you form will always feel like they are missing something. Due to the fact that they have never witnessed the genuine version of you, you will never know if someone actually accepts you. It is essential to keep in mind that being vulnerable does not mean completely divulging every aspect of your life or providing too much information. It is about being honest in a manner that corresponds to your own sense of authenticity. This is a way of admitting that I do not have everything worked out or that I care about this, even though it is frightening for me to confess it. Rather than allowing yourself to be viewed as someone you believe you ought to be, it is allowing yourself to be recognized as who you actually are. And when someone shows kindness toward you in response to your vulnerability, something truly beautiful takes place. It is not the mask that you wear that makes you feel noticed, rather, it is the person that shines through, not in terms of perfection, but rather in terms of our common humanity. This is where belonging begins. In addition, vulnerability has the capacity to motivate other people. When you demonstrate that you are willing to take a risk, you are letting others know that they can do the same. By being open, you create an environment in which people feel comfortable expressing themselves in their whole, which in turn fosters the growth of connections. An act of bravery can have a domino effect, leading to other acts of bravery. The road to belonging is not paved with invulnerability every step of the way down. In this context, it is not about having all the answers or looking to be perfect. Despite the fact that it may be upsetting, it is important to simply turn up as you are. It is about having faith that being genuine is always worth it, regardless of the results from your actions. When you create trust with someone, you will discover that the connections you make will be more profound, genuine, and satisfying than anything that is constructed on the basis of fear or disguise. The concept of connection is frequently conceived of as something that occurs spontaneously, as if it were a mystical occurrence in which two individuals meet and immediately comprehend one another. Despite the fact that this is sometimes the case, the majority of us do not experience connection in a single instant. Rather, it is a habit. The little everyday decisions that we make to show up, engage, and try again, even when it feels difficult, are the foundation upon which everything is constructed. A significant number of us hold ourselves to standards that are impossible to achieve when it comes to establishing relationships. We have the misconception that we need to be charming, that we must constantly say the correct things, or that we must know exactly how to handle any circumstance. And when we are unable to meet those expectations, we withdraw, believing that we are not good at connecting with others or that there is something fundamentally wrong with ourselves. On the other hand, connecting is not about being flawless. This is about being in the now. Take a moment to reflect on the connections in your life that are most fulfilling. They were not constructed in a single day or just through the use of great gestures. They developed throughout the course of time through a multitude of insignificant interactions, talks, experiences that they had in common, and even the moments of conflict that needed them to understand and forgive one another. In order to have a connection, it is not necessary to always get things perfectly. The key is to behave in a genuine and consistent manner at all times. You do not need to wait until you are ready or perfect to connect with other people, because this means that you can do so immediately. It is not necessary for you to either have all of the appropriate phrases or the ideal setting. There are times when the most effective actions are the simplest ones, such as sending a text message to someone to let them know that you are thinking about them, sharing a laugh over a dumb joke, or being willing to listen without passing judgment. The flawed daily moments that serve as a reminder that we are not alone are the building blocks of connection. Occasionally, it may feel like a source of frustration or even discouragement. It's possible that you've tried to reach out, but you've been ignored. It's possible that you've been vulnerable in the past, but you didn't receive the answer you had hoped for. To connect, however, requires patience, just like any other skill. Every single attempt will not result in a profound connection. And it's not a problem. What really important is the work that is put in and the willingness to keep trying. Every action that you take, regardless of how insignificant it may seem, lays the groundwork for the relationships that will eventually develop. Moreover, connection is a two-way street. The ability to discover individuals who will embrace and support you is not the only thing that is important. You must also be willing to do the same for other people. When you want to establish a bridge, sometimes the greatest way to do so is to ask yourself, how can I show up for someone else today? If you make it a priority to be present for other people, you will frequently discover that they will be present for you in return. An important point to remember is that connection does not have to be huge or dramatic. It does not necessarily entail having significant conversations or connections that last a lifetime. A simple gesture such as initiating eye contact, providing a sincere compliment, or sharing a moment of humor with a stranger can be all that is required to accomplish this. We are reminded of our common humanity through these seemingly insignificant acts of connection, which can help us feel a little less isolated. The practice of connection is beautiful because it enables growth, which is a beautiful thing. It is not necessary for you to be an expert at it. Stumbling, making mistakes, and starting over are possibilities. Furthermore, the relationships that you cultivate do not have to be perfect either. Simply said, they have to be genuine. When you let go of the need to get it right and instead concentrate on the practice itself, you make room for connection to grow in ways that you could not have anticipated. Therefore, the next time you feel the burden of loneliness or the dread of reaching out to others, keep in mind that this relationship is not about a single flawless moment. It is about making a consistent, if flawed, attempt to be present for yourself, for other people, and for the relationships that give your life substance and significance. When we live in a world that is constantly telling us that we need to be a part of something larger, whether it be a group of friends, a relationship, or a community, it is easy to forget that the most important belonging of all the belongings that you owe to yourself is the one that you owe to yourself. Prior to being able to connect with other people and before you can truly feel at home in the world, you must first be able to feel at home with yourself. Despite the fact that this is not always an easy road, it is one that should be taken. In order to feel like you belong to yourself, you must accept yourself without any restrictions or exclusions. The resolve to stand by oneself, even when others do not, is something that is essential. When you give yourself the grace to be imperfect, the compassion to heal, and the courage to grow, you are accomplishing this. Quite frequently, we look for validation from sources other than ourselves, with the expectation that if we are praised by another person, it would fill the voids in our sense of self-worth. The fact of the matter is, however, that the foundation of self-acceptance is so strong and unshakable that it cannot be replaced by any amount of external affirmation. This form of belonging does not mean that you will not experience feelings of loneliness or a desire to connect with other people. The urges in question are human and quite natural. On the other hand, when you are at peace with who you are, loneliness does not define you. It transforms into a sensation rather than an identity. You have come to the realization that your value is not based on the people who choose to show up for you, but rather on your capacity to show up for yourself. In addition, becoming your own safe space is an essential part of belonging to yourself. Learning to listen to your needs, respecting your limits, and having faith in your instincts are all essential components. Rather than relying on other people to fill the emotional voids in your life, you decide to learn how to meet your own needs first. This does not imply that you will not experience the need for other people or that you should isolate yourself. It merely indicates that you approach interactions from a point of completeness rather than a place of an absence of anything. Just try to picture what it would be like if you were to show yourself the same amount of love and kindness that you would like to receive from other people. It is important to acknowledge and rejoice in your accomplishments, to find solace in your hardships, and to communicate with yourself with compassion rather than condemnation. You will no longer pursue partnerships out of desperation or dread of being alone when you have reached a point where you actually belong to yourself. You seek them out instead because you are filled with delight, curiosity, and a genuine want to connect with them. A sense of belonging like this requires effort. It is necessary to relearn the messages that you have received over the years that have informed you that your value is dependent on your accomplishments, your attractiveness, or how well you fit in. It entails learning to stay with feelings that are difficult and fighting the impulse to numb or distract yourself from those feelings. In addition, it is necessary to make the decision to choose yourself over and over again, even when it is more convenient to seek approval from others. On the other hand, the benefits are huge. One is liberated when they are able to belong to themselves. Liberated from the obligation to demonstrate your value. You are free to leave partnerships that do not demonstrate respect for you. To be liberated to live a life that is genuine and genuine to oneself. This freedom does not mean that you will not be confronted with difficulties or that you will not continue to want for connection. Putting it simply, it indicates that you have constructed a foundation that is robust enough to bring you through those problems with grace and resilience. Rejecting other people is not a necessary part of belonging to oneself. Regardless of what challenges life may provide you with, it is important to establish a place within yourself to which you can always return. It's about having the knowledge that you are never completely alone because you have yourself, even if you feel like the world is not seeing you or misinterpreting what you are saying. You will discover the strength to extend your heart to others, not out of a sense of need, but rather out of a sense of abundance, when you feel that you belong. Once you have established a sense of belonging to yourself, you will no longer pursue relationships that were never intended for you. The people and interactions that are in alignment with who you genuinely are the ones that you attract instead. Furthermore, when those connections do come into existence, they will have a distinct feeling, not because they are flawless, but rather because they are constructed on a basis of mutual respect and honesty. In order to maintain a certain person in your life, you will no longer feel the need to put up a show or conceal aspects of who you are. The proper people will recognize you, value you, and cherish you just as you are, and you will know that they will do so. Being able to identify with who you are is the key to gaining the type of independence and tranquility that no one else can provide for you. Your spirit is rooted in the understanding that you are sufficient in your current state, and you learn to move through life with your head held high, your heart open, and your spirit based in this truth. The world in which we live is one that honors networks but places less importance on depth. The fact that you are a woman who does not have any friends does not imply that you are worthless, rather. It indicates that you have the chance to form connections from a foundation of sincerity. Remember that you are not defined by the number of friendships you do not have, rather you are defined by the bravery it takes to keep your heart open to the potential of new experiences. This is a message to the woman who feels invisible, unheard, or alone. It is the possibility that marks the beginning of the magic. I am grateful to you.